Hello, I'm Keith Beech Gruneberg and I'm Head of Formation within the Church of England's National Ministry Development Team. I've been delighted to be part of the symposium looking at the climate crisis and theological education, or rather, as was pointed out during the symposium, the wider environmental crisis of which the climate crisis is a part. These are issues which almost everyone would agree are amongst the most important we face, but so often they're the ones that we think we'll tackle just after we've faced this other thing, which is that little bit more urgent. So it's really good to have had a project which puts those issues front and centre. One thing that struck me during our discussion was how some of the key things that came up parallel discussions that many of us have been involved with in regard to racism and theological education. For example, there's the need to change dispositions, not just actions. And that might mean that we need to think about metanoia, about repentance or changing our mind, and about lament. There are questions of whether the topic is best addressed through one or more specific modules in the curriculum, or whether it's best addressed throughout the curriculum in every subject, or whether we need to adopt both approaches. There's the importance of thinking across the whole life of the institution, not just the curriculum. So how is the topic reflected in the worship at the institution, for example? Or how is it reflected in the decisions made by the governing body? There's the danger of virtue signalling, the danger of doing something that's helpful, but is as much about making ourselves look or feel good as it is part of a more broad reordering of our lives. And there's the issue of what range of views is acceptable. One can legitimately disagree, for example, on how much contribution new technology might make to reducing carbon emissions. Or one can disagree about what the particular targets should be for reducing carbon emissions. But are there views that go beyond what is reasonable and which should therefore be regarded as unacceptable within the context of theological education? I'm not suggesting that thinking about racism and thinking about the climate emergency won't be different in other ways. Clearly, an important dimension of discussions of racism, for example, is going to be that it could be about how some members of the community treat others in that community. But I do think that making some of the links that are there between the two topics could be helpful as we reflect on the environmental crisis and what it might mean for theological education.